Geerup asked this very important question. Where does a woman get the absolute right to her body from? That question deserves a book by Christopher Hitchens, not a short video from me. Unless we have some idea about where rights come from, we can't say what is and is not a right, or defend those rights against the political maneuvers of theocrats, authoritarians, tyrants and despots. The religious argument for rights is simply that they are granted by God. Okay, please elaborate on the rights God gave us. Our founding fathers elaborated these rights. They included things like freedom of the press, freedom of religion, a right to bear arms, etc. Where does God elaborate our rights in the Bible? What are these rights God granted us? The idea that God gave us rights seems to be historically false in at least one sense. The American conception of individual liberty and rights cannot be found in the Old or New Testament. Nowhere in the New Testament did Jesus ever challenge Roman laws, only Jewish religious laws. The citizens of ancient Israel and then later of Christianized Rome never knew the kind of rights we American citizens have now. Our notion of universal political rights and individual autonomy came about during the Age of Enlightenment, and it was as part of the rebellion against the tyranny of theocratic kings. From a purely pragmatic perspective, rights do come from the laws of the society we live in. An American woman has the right to go around without a headscarf. In Muslim countries she might be required to wear anything from a scarf to an all-covering burqa. The question of whether you have to wear a burqa or not may be a religious question, but when it is forced on all women it is because of government laws. In America we prevent such laws from ever coming into existence by calling for a separation of church and state. And Geerup can't make an argument that violates the separation clause. Perhaps this is why there is less religious presupposition in his video. I've got to hand it to Geerup. There, it seems he tried to limit the number of religious phrases and presuppositions in his video. But is he being honest about why he thinks abortion is wrong? I think that what Geerup really believes is that God somehow injects a soul into every embryo at the point of conception, and every fetus is one God wants to be born. Geerup used only a few religious phrases, terms like higher code, sanctity of life and God grants us inalienable rights, only one of which explicitly relies on a religious presuppositions for its meaning, the claim that our rights come from God. It is, however, far less religious language than he has used in past videos I've seen. Rights are a legal concept, not a religious one, in spite of religious influences which almost always seek to restrict rights rather than broaden them. These legal rights are not transcendent. They are contractual. Rights are a kind of political technology used to prevent authoritarian tyranny. The government guarantees certain rights and liberties to its citizens, creating a zone of exclusion that the government promises to never legislate over. It does this in order to get the consent of the people who are governed, which is necessary in a democracy. These rights, however, do not come from the law alone. If they did, there would be no basis by which we could judge a different legal system. How could we say that separation of church and state was a good thing in Muslim countries, or wrong for not having it? Our rights come from laws, but the laws come from political philosophies that were born of rebellion against theocratic tyrants. While America's founding fathers may have used phrases like God-given rights, the concept of a deity was never needed to make sense of rights. That was an appeal to a religious people, the people most likely to give in to the authoritarian tyranny of popes and kings. Our rights, in a sense, come from the wrongs we want to prevent. They are rooted in an experience with injustice that no American today knows from experience. Our founding fathers learned from the mistakes of history and elaborated on rights like freedom of expression, freedom of religion, equal protection of the laws, due process, and participatory democracy, etc. It was never a God-given system coming from the top down. Our rights and laws were created bottom up and built on a foundation of trial and error. Our laws are always changing. There are continual arguments in our courts about them. A woman's right to her body was never explicitly stated by the founding fathers, but it is implied by the philosophy they used. It avoids the wrong. No God is needed. We can see for ourselves how to best create and enforce these rules and work it out with democratic methods. We cannot turn to any holy book that now exists and work out the rules we now have. The only similarities between our laws and the laws of ancient Israel and Christianized Rome are the similarities we see in all cultures, including ancient cultures that never heard of Christianity. Those would be laws against murder, theft, etc. Once you get past those similarities, the laws of ancient Israel look more like the laws of Muslim countries than they do American laws. There was no freedom of expression, no freedom of religion, no equal protection, no due process, no participatory democracy. The laws are not morals. They are not even based on morals. Ultimately they must be pragmatic. We tried prohibition once, and while it might be nice, if no one drank booze, it was a law that cost too much to enforce. It was a law people did not want. The laws are merely rules we set up by reasoning about what rules will make our societies function best to get what the human beings in those societies want out of life. And moral or not, people wanted booze and the laws couldn't prevent people from getting it. Morals are your own private code of conduct over and above the laws. You can't make me believe in your moral code by making me obey a law I think is stupid. You might force me to wear a burqa out of fear, but that doesn't change my feelings or morals. It just makes me do something silly, because I'm afraid of how you enforce your rules. In the end it makes me dislike you, because you have enforced such a rule. You can make a woman give birth to a baby she doesn't want, but you cannot make her want that baby. The laws are not written in stone like commandments. They are open to change and evolution. In fact, they need to be, as our technological world changes the stakes on our behavior. I say that a woman does have the absolute right to her own body. I cannot imagine any scenario where someone would not feel that they themselves do not have the right to their own body, no matter how they feel about other people's bodies. Certainly there are scenarios where society denies the right to do with our body what we will for good reasons. We are not allowed to put certain drugs in our body. Another example, children always have adults making decisions for them about their bodies. Many boys are circumcised before they can comprehend what happened. You're taken to doctors who jab you with needles, you're vaccinated, fitted with braces perhaps, etc. Most young kids don't want any of that and don't understand that it was, supposedly, for their own good, even though they didn't understand. To be a child is to live under an extreme form of authoritarian tyranny. You're told what to eat, your vegetables, when to eat and when to sleep. You have no right to vote, to drive the car, etc. Childhood may well implant in some of us a desire for authoritarian tyranny where wiser minds relieve us of the burden of freedom, though no one who wants that directly calls them authoritarian tyrants. Very young children don't really have rights, they have protections. And for very good reason, they are the future of our society and we want the best kids we can get. We want them educated. We want them healthy and smart. We want them ready for the challenges of the dangerous and competitive world. Religious people apparently just want all the kids they can get regardless of how mentally crippled, weak and ill-equipped they are. Thus, when the woman's body is no longer at stake, the child suddenly becomes protected by laws, but it doesn't really have rights. Like it or not, a functioning brain is required to have rights, because in order to have them you need to be able to understand that you have them. Any entity that can't understand that it has rights doesn't really have rights. That includes embryos, animals, very young children and people in comas. In all these cases someone else has to make decisions for that entity. It is thus the decision maker who gets a right, not the entity supposedly being protected. That to me is the critical part of the equation. The question is then, who is going to be the decision maker? The state or the woman with the embryo in her belly? The state or the family with the daughter in a coma who have to pay to keep her on life support? What makes the mother's right to her body more important than protecting the fetus? This is because tyranny begins when the state enlarges its realm of choice and shrinks yours, the individual citizen who was guaranteed basic rights.